Some Democrats finally condemning Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein for allegations of sexual harassment against him. It has been 6 days since the New York Times published an investigative piece about Weinstein paying off his accusers. Just yesterday, Hillary Clinton released a statement, and so did former President Barack Obama, saying, quote, "Michelle and I have been disgusted by the recent reports about Harvey Weinstein. Any man who demeans and degrades women in such fashion needs to be condemned and held accountable, regardless of his wealth or status." Our Media Buzz host, Howie Kurtz, joins me, along with Fox News contributor and syndicated radio talk show host Leslie Marshall, and former presidential writer for George W. Bush and CEO of the American Majority, Ned Ryan, is also here. But Howie, I want to start with you, and I want to talk about these reports that NBC News had the story. They knew about the allegations. Ronan Farrow had done his investigative reporting with them or for them. They had the tape, and they decided not to go with the story. What do you know about that?
That is absolutely true, and we know it's true because Ronan Farrow said so last night on MSNBC. Here's exactly what he said. "I walked into the door at the New Yorker," this is after NBC declined to run with this story, "with an explosively reportable piece that should have been public earlier." Now, NBC's spin, which I am not buying, is that, well, it didn't meet our high standards and he didn't have then what he had later. But NBC had this as recently as August. New Yorker chose to publish it on the record allegations from numerous women, denied by Harvey Weinstein, we should add, but nevertheless, major embarrassment for NBC. Is the biggest scandal.
And the tape. I mean, they had an actual. The tape is horrifying when you listen to it. And they had that. So it's not, you can't even say that there was no way to corroborate these stories. They had many women on the record, but the tape.
Well, maybe some of the women hadn't yet agreed to be on the record, but the tape, the audio tape, is absolutely chilling. This is an Italian model 2 years ago who was wearing a wire, New York Police Department, after she says that Harvey Weinstein groped her. The next day you hear him trying to badger her to go into a room with him alone. He acknowledges the groping the previous day on this tape. That in and of itself would have been a story. And so you have to question, Melissa, the business relationships between NBC's Universal Pictures, NBC's Bravo, and Harvey Weinstein's company. They were cross-producing and distributing different TV and movie products. Was it that? Was it the fact that Harvey Weinstein's a big Democratic donor and a progressive that made NBC's appetite a little less voracious for this story? But clearly, NBC could have broken this story, chose not to, and it's hard to understand that decision.
It's very hard to understand because they did have that financial relationship that you talked about there, and it's very tangled and it goes deep, and that's part of the reason Harvey Weinstein spreading his influence and his money into so many different places is part of the reason why people were reluctant to come forward. If you add then a news organization that's reluctant to come forward, even though they have a tape from the New York Police Department, it gets to be really hairy. How much pressure do you think, what happens to NBC as a result of this?
Well, I mean, just to make clear, Ronan Farrow is NBC's guy, special correspondent, used to host a show on MSNBC. It's not like he's just some freelancer. So NBC, I think, enough with the blind quotes, needs to explain on the record, top executive, why it made this decision. And I think it's just a question of its reputation. NBC also, didn't go with the Access Hollywood tape, Access Hollywood having a business relationship with NBC as well. It's easy. There are a lot of journalists, apparently, who were intimidated by Harvey Weinstein or who looked the other way, but NBC had this story in its corporate hands and walked away from it. That is not NBC's finest hour by any shot.
And Leslie, this is why we're also focused on the political angle of this, is that one of the reasons that someone is able to get away with this kind of behavior is because they do have financial influence all over the place, and that, giving donations to so many in the Democratic Party, even employing his production company, employing President Obama's daughter as an intern. I mean, he really had his reach and his tentacles everywhere.
Yes, he did, but this is not about political side or ideology. This is about power, and it is about money, but power even more so. We saw that happen here in Hollywood with Bill Cosby. For years, some of these women that have now come forward together as a unified force, they called media, and everybody turned their back because it's Bill Cosby. Everybody loves Bill Cosby. That can't be true. So I think it's power, and certainly in Hollywood,
it is about politics,
there is
though,
that it can't be true.
Leslie, if I can stop you for a second, it is about politics because he was spreading his influence through donations all over the Democratic Party, and it was another way of ensuring that, you know, he had some recourse. The same way when he went out and asked people, please speak up for me, he felt like he had bought off everyone, I would think. Ned, what do you think?
No, Melissa, I mean, I think one of the bigger parts of this story is the fact not just the hundreds of thousands that Weinstein gave directly to the Democrat Party, it's the millions and millions of dollars that he helped raise for the Democrat Party. We're talking about one of the major financiers of the Democrat Party who's a sexual predator. And it's, you know, I'm glad the Clintons and Obamas finally found it within themselves to condemn this behavior. But I think one of the things that's not really being addressed is the fact that Harvey Weinstein gave over $300,000 to the DNC. They've given $30,000 of that away to other Democrats.
Yeah.
That's like moving money from your checking to your savings account and claiming you cleansed your hands of this money. But the bigger story, Melissa, is they still have over $270,000 of his money in their accounts. Yeah. They can't give it away. You know why? With their debt figured in September, the DNC only had $2.7 million. So you're seeing this is at a very bad time for the Democrat Party. They are struggling financially. And now you have one of their major financiers who, it turns out, is a sexual predator.
Leslie, do you think that this eventually reveals more of the predators that are out there? I know they still exist in news. I know that they exist across the entertainment industry. They certainly exist in music. There is so much damage, and then there's the collateral damage as well. The Weinstein Company was my book publisher. I know many hard-working people at that company who are now sitting there going, now what? They didn't know. They had a career. They worked hard. I mean, that's additional collateral damage beyond the people who obviously are the biggest victims, who are the actual firsthand victims. But the damage is so great. I mean, have we gotten to a point where we're going to start rooting these people out?
Well, I hope so, Melissa. You know, I think personally I've been the victim of sexual harassment over my years in this business, and I and many other women were afraid because of those people in power or people above them, even more powerful, who you may fear wouldn't listen to you. I hope this urges people to come out, and I think this is actually why there is a hesitancy, quite frankly, when information first comes out in this culture of fake news, if you will, for people to wait. The president waited, Hillary Clinton waited, former President Barack Obama waited to say something, and even these women certainly have waited a long time to come forward. It takes a lot of guts. They were brave, they were courageous, but I do think it is a green light for others, not only against this, but any perpetrator, regardless of their political leanings, to come forward so that justice can be done.
Ned, real quick, I'll give you the last word.
No, I think in some ways this is a microcosm of what took place in 2016. People were sick of a ruling class, of a protected class of people, whether it was D.C., New York, or Hollywood, and they're just rejecting this this elitism where they all protected each other, and it turns out they're nothing but a bunch of big hypocrites. So I think, you know, again, this is why 2016 happened, and I hope we'll see more of this being revealed and people rejecting it.
Okay. Thanks to all three of you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.